Good morning on a new 1 hour earlier Monday morning. For anybody joining the Pacific Coast, my name is Sean Blagsvet. I'm the CEO and founders of Gooey. I'm joined by several of my colleagues here, Steve and Ambika. Steve Carver is our Chief Revenue Officer. Ambika heads our developer relations. I think Martha's in here too, who runs all of our partnerships, especially with the impact space. So for today, we just wanted to go over our accelerator, our workflow accelerator that we're doing with the support of the Rockefeller Foundation, and just kind of give everyone an overview of what we're trying to achieve and hopefully answer any questions that you may have. So again, thank you for coming. What are we? So Gooey, we are, you can think of us as a platform that helps abstract all of these great AI recipes and work that people done really into these things that we call workflows. We'll use the word workflow and recipe kind of interchangeably today. But the idea that these are low code, kind of human readable artifacts that can be really useful to drive at both SDG impact and economic mobility in terms of aiding frontline workers. And we'll show you some examples of that today. To give you some of those examples of things that we've worked on to date over the last 2.5 years, we've built bots that will kind of go into more depth in the agriculture domain that are really useful for frontline workers or frontline shareholder farmers all over the world. So this is primarily in India and Africa. That allows folks to take pictures of ailing plants, to ask about upcoming weather, to basically get guidance about what's wrong with their crops, and really receive personalized advice back. And that one's been very exciting and is scaling up nicely in both India and Africa. We've just started looking into essentially using these things and done, I would say, sort of more limited pilots at the level of thousands, looking at kind of taking WHO guidelines and helping give better, kind of triaging and advice to nurses. This has happened in Nigeria. We're looking at doing similar work in Bangladesh. And then we also do a lot around, kind of like formal technician training. And so this is in terms of, how do people fix things? So we've taken the same technology and then allow people to do things like take 100,000, manuals and every HVAC system sold in America, and then allow technicians to ask any question about, how to fix one of those broken AC systems inside of Slack and get back cited answers. So this is just some of the things that are kind of possible with what we've built today. And with that kind of context, I figured it might be helpful to give you a sense of like, why are we running this accelerator and why is Rockefeller choosing to fund it? So in short, what we're working on here is trying to tease out this thesis, which is, hey, rather than having organizations and NGOs and governments build code, if they build it at this level of a workflow, which is, we'll kind of explain a little bit what we mean by that, which is, a little bit of, AI scripts plus connections to your own databases, plus kind of easier integrations into things like WhatsApp. If we're building it at that level, right, rather than at this code level, does this help, all of you guys ultimately deliver impact faster? And that's really the core question that we're trying to answer inside of the accelerator. And then, for, all of the selected participants, of which there'll be 6, what is it, right? And so it'll be a series of trainings and then actual deployments of these AI co-pilots with the idea of helping your beneficiaries and users, that you'll be getting kind of no cost consulting and training, and also the credits that are used to run all of that too. Up to 1,000 users. And then, you'll get the benefit of working together and building together in a similar cohort. And so with that kind of in mind, I figured we'd give you a little kind of background on what we do and kind of what we see in terms of the bigger promise of AI. And then we'll get into a set of questions that you've got. And then, basically, any other things, and hopefully we can answer all of those. So before I go ahead, any questions that have popped up yet, Steve or Ambika, that we should be aware of? Or should I go ahead?
Yeah, the only question was if the session is being recorded, and yes, it is, and we'll make it available for you all to share it with your colleagues if necessary.
Great. And we're joined by my colleague, Ambika, as well. or sorry, Martha, who just popped up. And Ambika, do you want to change your name? Just, if everybody can give their email addresses, the general email address is accelerator@gooey.ai, but you're welcome to reach out to any of us here too. So at a high level, obviously as an AI company working in the impact space, we're very excited about the potential promise of AI to really address some of the sort of core problems that have been in the impact space for a long time. And so, on one level, there's this promise that, hey, we may be in a place where every language, both written and spoken, may be understood, and that, any person, regardless of the language that they grew up with, and can access this incredible sum of human knowledge and reasoning, and then have that be made available to everyone. And it's kind of a big one, but we think it's really exciting. That particularly in the agriculture space, we look at this promise of, given the next decade and the climate crisis, every farmer's got to change their crops and learn how to grow new stuff. And that personalized AI may be informed if we can take the videos that are being, when one farmer figures something out and shares that to others, in conjunction with the latest research, in conjunction with NGO guidance, in conjunction with Department of Agriculture guidance, if we can really aggregate all of that and put that into a reasoning system, that this could really enable every farmer on earth to get personalized advice that is informed by the latest data, informed by their neighbors as well, and hopefully make better decisions in agriculture. And Farmer Chat, which we'll go into, is kind of a first step toward that. We see this promise also in health, which is that, scenarios like, can community healthcare workers make better decisions that are, formed in their local language, right? And to do that, as, global healthcare is, the need for that is increasing dramatically. And then in the government sector, that the fact that every government benefit could be actually understood by citizens and users of those benefits in their own local language, is also really exciting. And then, we've done a fair amount in the education space where folks are using us to do things like, build personalized lessons plans for students. This is happening in Malawi. This is also happening in Ghana. For each student, right, that are really tailored to their needs and done on a phone and at almost zero, marginal additional cost. So those are some of the, broad level things that we're excited about. As a platform, we don't make those things directly. We really lean into folks like you guys to help make those happen. But these are some of the ones where we think it's certainly possible within this year to make many of these scenarios come to light. And so if you look at, kind of what's motivating us, and I figure this might be, kind of helpful for you guys, is trying to solve some of the problems that we see, not just with organizations building AI, but specifically impact organizations. So, every org is sort of struggling in this new age of like, what's working in my field? How do I keep up? If I choose one platform or another, do I lose all of the advances in, open source or private, like OpenAI or Google, and vice versa? If I make a bet on OpenAI, do I lose all the great open source advances? And then, as this sort of dizzying pace of AI is happening, when I make a change, how do I know if it's actually like better, cheaper, cleaner for my particular use case? And then, as we've been working in this space for the last 2.5 years, and specifically kind of impact related things, there's a whole new or an additional set of challenges, I would say, for folks that are working in the government and NGO space around AI, which is they're particularly resource constrained, developers are expensive. And so it'd be nice if that could be abstracted up, that, low resource languages generally aren't particularly well understood yet. They're getting better and better every day. But if you look underneath like the top 50 languages, these things kind of fall down on their face sometimes. And so we really want to try to take advantage of really the sum of all of the best models, ideally. That low-end phones and poor connectivity, ends up being an additional issue of, you look at especially places like Malawi, where households will have shared phones, where data is particularly expensive relative to purchasing power. That you really want these things to then work on things like voice and WhatsApp, and be resilient in a low connectivity environment. that for many folks, privacy and the ability to be open source really matters, and the ability to run those things in an on-prem. So that basically means rather than running in the cloud, right, people can install it in their own systems. That, for all of the folks, right, that are trying to give value, that they usually have to connect to some existing, data systems. That we find that if it's slow, people don't use it. So performance really matters. That a lot of times the source documents, if I go back to like the healthcare example or the agriculture example, a lot of those will be in manuals, right, which are like 150-page long PDFs full of pictures and diagrams, and those have to be understood well, right, in order to give good advice. That we have to, understand what are good bad answers, that, we realize that hallucinations in the AI space can cost lives and livelihoods. And so there's a whole mess of strategies to really try to handle that and understand when they're happening and minimize any risks. And then kind of design for the risk there to appropriate to the use case. And we can kind of get into that. And then, number 10, and this one's really important, and it relates to one of the requirements that you'll see coming up, which is that field level experts, we see as being vital here, right? That in order to make these systems work, it can't just be, tech dudes living in Seattle like me, right? You have to couple these interventions with field level experts that actually understand beneficiaries, users, technicians, frontline workers that are on the ground. And then those people themselves need to be able to make updates into the knowledge base and are a key partner here so that this bot works better and better and better over time. And so you'll see some of the ways that we try to make that accessible. As you're making changes, you have to be able to measure, is this better? If we have to be able to find bugs. And then finally, evaluation we see as being really vital for, everyone that we work with, and yet it's really hard. And then finally, cost. It has to be cheap. And so part of this accelerator program is teaching all of you guys basically how to do cost optimization of these tools over time too. So to make it kind of a little more real, we figured we would kind of show an example. So this is Farmer Chat. This is one of the ones that we're using, or that we built, to goodness, at this point, 2 years ago. We demoed it in April of 2023 at the UN General Assembly with our partner Digital Green. And this is an example of, where inside of WhatsApp, farmers can ask a question. They can actually record it via audio. They'll get back an answer with citations that you see here. They can take pictures. We integrate with a variety of kind of image APIs to basically diagnose plant issues and get back those answers. Those answers can be available in a wide variety of languages, in this particular case, Hindi. And then you can see we're getting citations back to, videos that Digital Green basically put as part of that content library. And then the bot is basically making the determination of, oh, this one's relevant to the question and the photo that came in. And then for folks that want to dive deeper, because we know that vetted data is so important here, right? They can get back and they can actually see the PDFs or the videos that, the bot used to really generate this answer. And this is the sort of thing that, that we expect each one of you to be able to make relatively easily and measure that impact for your own set of users. And so we keep talking about workflows. This is the actual workflow that drives this inside of, Gooey.AI. And the one thing that we can kind of walk through it in the later sessions, but you'll see it's not that complicated. It's a set of instructions that you see here, a selection of a language model, and then if we don't have this on the page, but it's really then just all of those knowledge documents and this kind of test screen that's over on the side that allows you to test out questions. And then if you go into integrations, you can do things like hook it up into a bot. And so the idea that we're trying to show here is that these prompts are the things that you guys are going to work on and share, and in addition to your knowledge bases, and then hopefully see that, hey, this is not that complicated and we can make these things to work, and they can be really impactful. And in terms of impact, in terms of that particular Farmer Chat example, to give you a sense of the scale that, can often be possible with these things. This was back, in 2024, which is 35,000 messages, 4,500 users, right? The feedback was pretty good. This has been scaled via other work that we're doing in the Gates Foundation's funding, and kind of the initial results of this at reasonable degrees of scale, an N of 20,000 plots, 5 countries, we are seeing yields that are pretty exciting, where in this particular case, 66%. And so, folks like Digital Green and the government of India and the Gates Foundation are now trying to figure out how do we really scale, at least in the agriculture perspective, these interventions, not just at tens of thousands of people, but up to hundreds and millions of people, which is exciting. And so we see that particularly that potential also being possible for these level of productivity gains in other fields too. And that's a big part of what this accelerator is about. I'll kind of pause there before I get into this kind of theory of change stuff. Any questions that have popped up?
Yeah, we've had a couple, and I'm answering them as we go in the Q&A section. The first was sort of about the ongoing running costs. Yeah. And the answer to this is through 2025, the cost is covered by the grant from the Rockefeller Foundation. Thank you very much, Rockefeller. But the ongoing cost beyond 2025 is going to be variable depending on the complicated level of complication of the workflow, what components you choose to include, the size of the knowledge base, and the number of interactions you have with it. And we can have a one-off with anybody who's specifically concerned about this.
Yeah, I mean, the part that makes this, and I know that it feels a little bit like a non-answer, and we apologize for that, is one, Moore's law is on our side, right? And so these things are getting cheaper and cheaper every day. DeepSeek came out, in late December of last year, and really showed that on an inference perspective, which means the cost it takes to answer a given question, it showed it was literally 96% cheaper than what OpenAI was. And so, what we have generally found, and in terms of the largest costs of these things, it's mostly the people and salaries around getting this to actually work and be useful for your population, and much less so the ongoing running costs. In general, you can have running costs on a per question basis that will go from as little as a penny to as much as 5 cents a question. And so you can kind of then back into the math. If you've got 1,000 users, asking 20 questions a month, right, which is generally typical. So that's 20,000 questions. If each one of those is 3 cents a question, I think if my math here is right, you're looking at around $600 per month to basically support those 1,000 users. But then there are things you can do to optimize those costs down as well. The other ones, we are working a little calculator that we'll kind of put out there for you too. The other ones that you will see are more expensive. Like right now, it's more expensive if you want to run it on an IVR, so that people can just speak to it in their local language and it works on a non-smartphone and then it speaks back answers. Those are more expensive. Those kind of have per minute charges. But again, over the course of the next year, we expect those to go down as well. But anyways, I think that would be part of what we can hopefully walk you through. And then, as we said, every time a new model comes out, there's a whole set of evaluation frameworks that we've got where you can see for your use case, is this, better, faster, cheaper for us or for you? And in terms of, what's covered in the accelerator, so as Steve mentioned, we're covering all of the costs and usage piece up to that first 1,000 users and through, I think, September of 2025. And then after that, if you choose to hang out and continue to use us, we will, up to the next $30,000 of spend after that, we'll basically give you all of those things at cost. And in addition to that, to work to kind of optimize those costs. So I hope that was a long answer to your simple question. Other questions before we go forward?
Yeah, and the one that I'm answering right now in the Q&A is about how technical people need to be able to take advantage of this. My short answer is, we asked for a technical PM. However, somebody with very limited technical capabilities can get a workflow up and running, connected to a knowledge base and connected to a WhatsApp number. But if you want to go more deeply, integrations into your own databases, your own resources, external resources, then you're going to start needing somebody with, ability to understand a little bit of Java code. Do you want to expand on that?
JavaScript, not Java.
JavaScript.
And then, so yeah, I feel like maybe the way to walk you through that is to show you a live example. So I will go over here and just hit share screen, and are you guys seeing this one? So if I just go to that farmer chat example that we see here, and you can interact with this, you can ask this questions of like, when should you plant chili? And it will go ahead and, this is sort of simulating what people see on top of WhatsApp. And then based on, this is for India, that it's basically providing this, it's giving this answer back, and it's providing a set of follow-up questions, and, it's generating this. And then the part that's interesting here is if you want to go ahead and check out, the actual recipe that's driving all of this, this is what it is. So this is the WhatsApp demo, and, we'll share this over here. So you guys can actually play with it if you'd like to too. That's the farmer chat piece. And so this is the prompt, and the idea is it's tended to be human readable, so that if I wanted to come in here and fork this and like make it my own, I could say, hey, this is like farm bot rather than farmer chat. And I can then give it a different personality by really just adjusting this script. And then you can see that the meat of it is really just this prompt here. So I'm giving it guidelines of telling it what to say when people say hi. I'm saying, hey, please ask the user once for the location, gender, and crop, because we want to gather that data. There's a little bit of stuff in here where, there's this location piece where if somebody's asking for their location, we send back a button inside of WhatsApp that's really asking them that. And then we're giving it, in this particular case, tools so that it can use the web and look up data like the price or the weather. That information is supplemented with the knowledge base that came from Digital Green. And so you would push out whatever knowledge base that you have here. And then if you come down here, you can see, hey, I want to turn on, in this particular case, text to speech. So it's speaking back the answers in this particular Hindi voice. And if you wanted to then turn on speech recognition, we really offer all of the best speech recognition models from a variety of vendors. So, we allow you to say, great, I want to run, this thing so that it works in speech recognition for my language, and you just sort of pick that up. This is the artifact, right, that you guys will be making over the next couple months. And then, this recipe, this workflow that you can then do, you can basically test over here, which is happening on the side. And so I can say, what is the weather right now to grow in Utapur? And it's basically looking up the weather information, pulling that back in, and then answering this question. And this is what we'll work through over, really a 10-week period to try to make this simple enough that you guys can turn this into real things that are, measurably impactful for your users. And then the part I was just going to show you over here is if you go over to integrations on any of these things, and then you tap add a new integration, this basically allows you to say, hey, I want to make this as a little web component on my site, or hook it up into WhatsApp, or underneath the covers, you can also hook it up via telephone or SMS here too. So that's
Sean, can I just add that, as not being as technical as the other three, my team leaders here, GUI provides amazing support. So anybody that feels that they're not technically capable, you are, and we will provide the technical support to do that. Let's face it, AI, bots, this is all new to a lot of us in the development field. I come out of the UN, Save the Children. We didn't have this kind of skill set within those organizations, and GUI is here to bring that to you guys. So anyway, don't be scared. Jump in.
And then the real point of all of this, right? And this is, I alluded to this earlier, it is really, and this is something that we will be helping build with each of you. It is really trying to show that these things are useful, and that they are really pushing forward a theory of change that is going to be particular to each one of your organizations. And so really our theory of change around these, like agriculture bots, is that we're trying to get higher income. And it's really useful to define that sort of North Star goal, that we're trying to help the users and these small shareholder farmers raise their income by using these bots. And then our theory of change is that, well, they're going to post a problem, and they're going to be motivated enough to basically ask a question of this bot. and that, we are then assuming that they will receive a correct response, assuming that their behavior changed, and assuming that increase in yield and income that happens. And then the real key is, well, are those assumptions true? And so one of the things that we're excited about is, we will work with you guys to build these dashboards that surface this data, that say, well, how many people are actually asking these questions? How often do they do it? When they ask a question, do we answer this question, or do we say, I don't know? One of the things that we'll get into is your golden questions. So we'll ask, and you'll see this in the application, each organization to bring essentially 40 or so of the most common questions that you get from your users, and what would an expert human being provide as the answer. This is what we call the golden set. And so every time we make a change, we're basically running that to see how well does this bot work against your kind of commonly asked golden set of questions. And that's one of the ways that we then measure, are we getting the correct response. We do the same thing for, you'll see we have ways that we categorize all of these questions that will come in for you. So if in the healthcare domain, if this is about diabetes versus hypertension versus, the common flu, we can basically begin to segment those things, which should give you guys insights of, oh, we're doing well for these topics, but we're really not answering very well for these other topics. We need to beef up our knowledge base and our questions and go ask, those users, why is this not working out? And really that kind of gives you a kind of guidepost to really improve what you're trying to make. And then finally, we have these kind of built-in thumbs up, thumbs down pieces that also gives us data, whether we're giving a correct response when people just tell us directly, like I liked or I didn't like that answer. Additionally, we'll be working with your pilot users to basically say, this particular case, like, to send out those follow-up surveys to say, like, was the advice that we gave last month actually followed? And then additionally, it depends on kind of what your theory of change here, but if it's higher incomes, we strongly recommend, doing some of these baseline surveys before and after, so that we can actually see, did change happen? What was the income before this intervention? What was the income after? And then finally, and this gets back to the cost piece, and I think where these things get really interesting as organizations like you guys are trying to decide whether this makes sense to invest in after this pilot, is what we really want to actually connect this to is, if we think that these things, if we can prove that they're actually raising incomes, well, what was the cost of that income raise? When we include all of the time, when we include the GPU costs, when we include the software costs, and that's where this real figure that's going to be particular to each one of you, but I actually think is the most important, which is the cost efficiency outcome, which is if you're aiming for an outcome of $1 increase in income, how much did we have to pay via this AI bot intervention to make that happen? And then that is directly comparable against other activities. And in the end, we hopefully should be able to show that these are more efficient. And if they are, then it makes sense for organizations to invest more. And if they're not, well, then we need to do better. So any questions on this sort of theory of change thing? This is where we'd like to be at the end of the accelerator with each one of you guys, so you can really prove this and prove the utility for your own particular use case.
And share this, frankly, with your constituents to show
Yes.
the innovation that you're making to further your cause. Sean, real quick, there's one other question that it seems interesting that others might want to hear. They want to understand more about the open source nature of what will be built and how will our data be made available to the general public.
So if you'll notice in kind of what I showed in that last farmer chat example, which is, Digital Green really with us built that first bot that was farmer chat. But when you'll notice when you say fork, because we chose to make that one public, other organizations can take those documents that they use to train their bot, plus the prompts, and really take that as a sort of starting point. And there's at least half a dozen other agricultural NGOs that have done exactly that. for this accelerator, one of the requirements is that this recipe that you guys will end up creating is public. If you come in independently to GUI, that's not a requirement. It, like any other code repository, you can choose to make it public or not. That's really dependent on you guys. But for this accelerator, we are asking that the recipe and the tools that you used and the evaluations that you used to build this will be pushed into the open source domain so that other similar organizations in your field can go ahead and use them. So that's at the abstracted level of the workflow. And so that part we want to be open source, and it's one of the funding requirements of Rockefeller that becomes open source. The code itself, right, the orchestration layer that is GUI, and maybe at this point I'll go to a picture on it. So excuse me one second. The code and source orchestration layer that is GUI, that is itself also open source. So if you want to get into that, that's kind of all of the stuff down here. You can, and if you've got, but the idea is you probably shouldn't need to. But if you want to basically take really our server components and run them on your own hardware, you absolutely can go ahead and do that. And and basically, if you go over to also link to it here. But if you come into our GitHub, this is all of the server stacks that are available there, and the various server repo and the GPU orchestration one, and so these are available for you guys, and this is just an open source repo. You're welcome to deploy that, and we'll show toward the end of the accelerator basically if you want to take that hit of running those GPUs yourself, you can go ahead and do that too. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, I think I'll just chime in one more in case there was other question underneath that, which would be the private information about the actual interactions and who are making those interactions are being held very private. No PII is being shared, and we can share a link to you for our privacy policy, but we have very strong privacy policies around how we protect data, and keep that out of nefarious hands and out of, frankly, the models being trained. They're not trained on your data or our data, anything that goes through our platform. So be comfortable with that data is protected. It's just the infrastructure of how the workflow is built that is public.
Yeah, so specifically, those LLM prompts, right, for this exercise will be public, and then how you guys do evaluation, which is itself another just prompt. We want those to also be public. If there's source data that is related to PII, that is specifically present or protected and will not be made public, and you guys have discretion over that too.
One other quick question: can a nonprofit organization apply for this grant for solutions catering to internal stakeholders to optimize internal process efficiency as well? The answer is absolutely yes. We see this as a way of empowering the frontline workers in your organization, really making them more efficient, maximizing worker productivity so that you can serve more beneficiaries faster, cheaper, with lower cost.
And I'll speak to some of, so if you take Opportunity, which is one of the larger clients that we work with, they operate across, I think, 50 countries globally. They operate banks, they operate schools. They're a very large NGO. What's interesting is they have 30 different bots that they are running inside of their organization. So they're doing stuff in the agriculture domain, the education domain, the finance domain. And so I would fully expect, as you begin to get comfortable with this, you will be able to run up to basically create new scenarios that you can go ahead and use for other organizational purposes. The only thing that I would say is we are targeting folks that are trying to serve more than 1,000 or up to 1,000 people with this particular accelerator, just because we want to do things like measure, theory of change, and did they actually change behavior and get to a reasonable degree of statistical significance. So I would say, yes, you can go ahead and target your internal stakeholders. I just hope there's a lot of them. That will increase your chances of getting selected. Other questions?
More around the cost, the ongoing cost. One organization is asking about implementing something for psychological therapies, and how much it would cost to continue to run it long enough to get sufficient feedback to report on whether it's beneficial. Our expectation is that within the time frame of this accelerator, not only will you be able to build it, deploy it, test it, and get that data back to understand whether or not it's successful. So there shouldn't be additional costs needed in that.
Yeah, I mean, this is where some of the requirements that you guys do come into play. You're going to see as we start up, we're very much in the belief of we're going to try to get you guys to have something that you can demo internally and with real users within a week or two of starting. And then we will iteratively make that better and better and better and add on more functionality and add on more measurement. And so the thing that we have seen that has slowed this process down with others is, like you have to be able to broadcast or at least, push out and tell, potential users about this solution. And then, sometimes you'll have to recruit them if you want them to do something different. And so that's the one part that if you wait 4 months on that one, then obviously, the feedback cycle gets slow. And so I think we'll talk, we've got some slides in terms of coming up around terms of schedule, but I would just say, the sooner we can basically get real feedback coming from your beneficiaries and users, the better. And then you're going to be able to make better informed choices and kind of get to, knowing whether all of this is worthwhile and proving that it's worthwhile faster.
One of the question was, is there a minimum number of users that's required to be eligible? And then it went on to say that they want to try it on internal stakeholders before expanding it to external users. The answer there is we asked that the total pool of beneficiaries that you serve to be over 1,000. Of course, the test pool or beta testers can be a smaller pool than that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we fully expect like you're not going to deploy this to 1,000 people before you're confident that it's working and working well, and that you've incorporated the feedback from that first small pool of folks. And so we talk about that a little bit in terms of this timeline, which is, if you look at the May to June timeline, this is where we want to scale to like 20. Right. And basically making sure that you're measuring things, that you've iterated a little bit in these smaller groups. And then it's not until the June, July timeframe that we expect to hopefully get up to hundreds of people, right, toward that. And I would strongly encourage, each one of these interactions with people is a chance to build trust or a chance to lose it. And so that first set of people you want to keep smaller and, encourage them to be patient. But before you scaled out to everybody else. So I feel like this is Ambika, you want to talk a little bit about this timeline as we see it here? This is my colleague.
Sure.
Developer relations.
Hi, you can reach out to me whenever you feel stuck with tools, even if you're not applying for the application. I'm always around. But Sean, you don't want to talk about the orchestration?
No, it's a little, yeah.
Okay.
No, I think it's all right.
Yeah, so I think I guess everyone does know that we are applications are due on the 14th, and by the 19th we'll have the people we want to get on with the cohort, and of course then the training will start mid-March, and our idea is that perhaps as you slowly iterate, we'll introduce you in like 1 or 2 hour Zoom sessions weekly on how to use the tools and make sure that you're able to get the best out of it for your particular use case. And then, of course, May to June, we'll look at how we can iterate it. And I think the Copilot Builder is really good at that and allow you to like version test, like figure out how things are working for you, what do you want to ramp up, what do you want to not use at all. And then eventually we'll look at how we can scale that up through June and July, and then do reflections at the end of it. I think maybe we want to move to the next slide, John.
Is this
The
what you
core of the okay, sorry, it's slowed down a bit for me. The core of what we're going to learn is how to sort of start building this, like using prompting and all of the kinds of things that we've already been seeing out and about in the market. But really, prompting doesn't make a bot. You need to do a lot more, and I think particularly there's some level of commitment from your end when it comes to figuring out what metrics you want, bringing in the right kind of people on the cohort, and also making sure that you have the right kind of questions to ask. And then we'll kind of run you through how to supercharge it, make sure you have the best kind of evaluations, make sure that you can make it agentic or add functions. So that means that you can dip into other databases that you have within your resource pool, or looking at Google search, weather, location, all kinds of things that can make your Copilot run really wonderfully across all your deployments. And then how to deploy it on WhatsApp, which has been kind of very popular, specifically in our opportunity, and how to like kind of use that. And then eventually, of course, we look at how it will go back to the theory of change piece, which Sean spoke about earlier, and kind of get analysis dashboard and then iterate based on that. And then, of course, a small module on like tips and tricks to kind of get you going and make sure that your Copilot's running smoothly. From your end, we are expecting that you can commit 2 people, a technical PM. Let's move to the next slide. And someone from the field who can give expert answers. The reason this balance will work is that the technical person can kind of build the Copilot, iterate on it, but the field person is really the person who attests if this Copilot is really working for you out there, if the answers it gives us correctly. You do need to commit to giving us a good number of like golden question and answer pairs. This will help to make sure that your evaluations work well and the Copilot is running wonderfully within your domain. And then, of course, if you're doing non-English, which I think we have been really excelling on non-English Copilots, is to make sure that you have human translations available to us, so which will allow you to kind of iterate and make sure that the Copilot is giving you the right answers and the orchestration works for you.
But the one thing we would say that we'd left out here is this is not unbounded. And so what we're really looking for there is a set of audio samples of, say, 20 common utterances, right, that people would record if, say, they're doing it in WhatsApp, if they're doing it on the phone, that they've recorded on the phone, and then an expert human created transcription in a local language of that, and then an expert human translation for those 20 pairs. We use this to basically figure out which of all of the best competing AI models should be used for your use case this week. And so one other thing that we'll sort of, I'll put in here that's not mentioned, but it's sort of implicit, is this market moves really fast. And so I fully expect like Llama 4 will be out by the time it's sometime in the middle of what we're doing. You know, GPT-5 may ship. There will probably be another version of Claude. And so, you know, we'll be integrating all of those latest models and testing them. And so that you can then see for each one of those that are coming out, is that better, faster, cheaper for what you guys are building. There's one other subtle point here, which is we definitely want to figure out and begin to get you guys down the road of making a reasoning data set for your use case. And so that's really where you're going to talk to this field level expert. And let's imagine that they're in healthcare and they're doing they're doing basically triage of patients. That we're going to try to work with you to basically try to figure out what is the thought process and the step-by-step set of activities that, given an incoming hard question or query or problem, right, then that expert has. What is the set of activities that they go through to answer that? What questions they ask? What data do they look up? What charts do they refer to? And to try to document that. And the reason we're doing this is there's a sort of new wave of reasoning-based AI models coming in. And we expect that the ability to fine-tune those reasoning models on top of the reasoning data sets that you guys create will hopefully make these bots really incredible and really behave at a true expert level over the course of this next year. A lot of what that's going to come down to is the quality of the data set that you guys end up creating for your own particular domain. And so there will be some sessions on that too. But that's kind of a little more bleeding edge. Other questions, right? And before we keep going, I can go ahead.
Sorry, two sort of administrative ones, which is regarding how the application was completed, asking how in-depth you'd like the responses to be. I'll say the more information we have, the better we are able to assess which program is best suited. But we don't need a 20-page write-up on your program. So I would say be as concise as possible while sharing the salient details that will help us make that decision. And then somebody, I think, already completed the application and based on this information session wants to edit it. I would say just go and resubmit the document with anything that you want to update, and you can note that you've submitted another application so that we can marry the two.
And then on that one, just mail us at accelerator@gooey.ai too. And just make sure, yeah, and then we'll write you back to confirm that we've got that data too. But I would just ask, please do that before the March 14th deadline.
Yes. And then the last one was, do Indian nonprofits need FCRA, Foreign Contribution Regulation Act license to be eligible?
They don't need, I will come back to you on this one. They need to be accredited in India, given that we're not making any money transfers to this. I don't think you'll need FCRA, which is usually the thing that allows you to receive a foreign transfer. But we will come back with this one. But my 90% answer, and I just want to confirm it with the Rockefeller lawyers, is that if you are a registered trust or NGO, you should be good. But we will go ahead and clarify that with the lawyers on their side. I would just say, if you go to docs.gooey.ai, or better yet, another good one, if you want to get a sense of kind of like what we do and how we work, Gooey.ai/impact is a really good page. There's some videos on there that I encourage you guys to check out. That'll hopefully give a slightly, it's a little more technical, but it kind of, what are we doing and how does it work? And then just, to kind of reminders of, stuff that everybody needs to know of, deadlines March 14th. If you need any help with the accelerator, just feel free to email us. Our personal email addresses are here. And Steve is just steve@Gooey.AI. And then the general one is accelerator@Gooey.AI.
I just want to reiterate that, that we talked about farmer chat, and we spoke to some of the clinical, community health worker scenarios. The audience is not limited to those, and frankly, the more creative the use case, the better. We wanted to expand this as much as possible and have as many different fields represented and interacting with each other so that we can learn from each other. So,
yeah. And then, there's not really a restriction on geography for this one. And so you could be US based, you could be non-US based, you could be English based, you could be non-English based. And then I think, in terms of guidelines, as we said, anyways, I feel like you guys, we're trying to basically build tools that are going to demonstrably prove impact to frontline workers everywhere. And so if you feel like you got a good one, we want to hear from you.
We have a quick poll I figured I'd put up just to sort of, based on this information session, we'd love to see how many people feel like they're likely to submit an application, or if you feel like you're probably not.
How do they do that?
I put it up and people are voting already, so
okay, great.
On the screen.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, great. Okay.
For those or maybe I'd like more information, please definitely reach out to us and we will get you that more information. Or if you'd like to submit another question, we can answer it here.
Yeah, the only thing that I was going to say is we will select 6 orgs, but even those that don't make it into that 6 piece, we'll still be publishing all of the workflows and the results that we have as we go forward. And so hopefully you'll still get to benefit from the collaborative artifacts that we're making here, and hopefully those are useful to you. Okay, if there's no any other questions, if not, I think we'll call it a day. I think we're 10 minutes over. Okay, we look forward to seeing you guys apply, and look forward to those applications. And then as I said, we'll get back to folks I guess in 10 days. So you've got another 4 days to get them in, and then we'll get back to everyone mid next week in terms of those selections. We'll say thank you, Ambika, thank you, Steve, thank you, Martha, and thanks everybody for coming. We'll see you.